So state modeling, it comes in a number of packages, not the least of which is state NACs. So do you have any kind of criteria for pollutant increase, even if you don't trigger PSD in Texas, there's minor source state NAC modeling required. And you pretty much go through the same process as a PSD model, except for some important differences. You're using 1 year MET instead of 5, where you would with PSD.
Less chance of hitting a really bad day.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, yeah. It's less turning the crank for sure, and less processing time, and all that. But the really big difference is the way that the Texas air quality modeling guidelines are written as to what you model in your state NACs as opposed to your PSD analysis. PSD analysis, you're modeling your project increases, and they're determined just the way they are in your applicability determination for that project. So you have your projected actual minus your baseline actual, that's your increases. Fundamental difference, if you avoid PSD and you're into a state modeling analysis, state NACs analysis, the guidance says that you model the net difference in your allowable emission increase, the net allowable emission increase. So you're just modeling, if you don't change your PTE, your potential to emit, or your permanent allowable, you don't have to model that source. It's 0, right? And that comes to play a lot for your affected sources like your boilers or heaters. Say you need more steam demand, and you might have this giant, enormous PTE of your boiler, and your steam demand is going to take up a little bit of that. So you go through all that stuff we did the first day of figuring out how much was I able to accommodate, and you finally get down to at the end of the analysis, and you say, okay, I've got this much incremental increase that's really caused by my project, okay? And that's what you model. But that in the state analysis, if you haven't changed your PTE, that boiler doesn't come into play, right? Because there's no physical change, there's no change in method of operation, and you don't have a net allowable emission. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And there's some other smaller things. Usually Texas doesn't make you go out 50 kilometers. Once you model your project, you get your significant impact area, and the PSD rules, and you add another 50 kilometers of that and model all the sources in that area. Texas usually makes you, if you're over your seal, Texas makes you model the rest of your facility or the rest of your source, like the facility-wide model, and then makes you add a representative monitoring background to that, and then you're done. So you don't have to, you don't usually model other industrial sources in a state NACs analysis. Sometimes they'll ask you to, if they got some monitoring years, or like you use a monitor that's data that's 3 years old or last year or something, but they recently permit something else in your area, they'll say, okay, well, this new couple of permits that we've issued, their impact hadn't hit that monitor yet. They're not operating, so the monitor's not picking up their impact. So would you model them too? So makes sense. And you know, the main thing is there's just a lot more flexibility to negotiate with them. Then we got these other things that we're calling state property line analysis, and they're just net increases upstream and downstream. And they're also for species H2S, SO2, sulfuric acid, and usually model your project first, and if it's below 2% of the state property line standard, you're done. Same way with the NACs. If it's less than the seal, just your project's less than seal, you're done, you're finished.
So it's the NACs pollutants plus those 3 pollutants.
Correct.
Okay. Not just those 3 pollutants.
Yeah, the state. So there's separate rules in the Texas body that address H2S, SO2, and H2S, SO4, and they're just concentration criteria. There can't be a net increase in the concentration. So So you have to check the box there. Then my favorite is the State Health Effects Review, or ESL. Some people refer to it as the mirror analysis, the modeling effects review analysis. Goes by many different terms. Impacts review. And the last thing I can pick up, you might have to, if you do a PBR, a 512 engine, go ask for demonstration that you haven't gone over the National Ambient Air Quality Standard. When I took these slides to one of my favorite modelers at TCEQ, they said, you know, you need to put on something about a pre-modeling meeting, that's important. So it is, it's recommended by TCEQ. A modeling protocol is certainly required for PSD projects. Sometimes you get away with a checklist or just a meeting or something for minor NSR reviews. So I think I talked about these, the differences relative to PSD modeling. 1 year instead of 5-year met. The state receptor starts at the property line. EPA starts at the fence line. If you don't have a fence there, if you have something keeping the public out, hopefully those are the same boundary for your facility, but they're not always. Contemporaneous increases, decreases, not have to be included in preliminary impacts analysis. And check on that with your state too. Sometimes there's a lot of controversy where those have to be included even in the PSD analysis. Okay, so significant impact level refers to, it's referred to as a de minimis level for state NACs. In other words, they use the federal seals to say when you don't have to go any further, you blow a seal, you're finished. And I think I talked about the last bullet already. Oops, sorry. This just gives the property line standards for the state property line analysis. Just look those up. Additional considerations for the state property line analysis. One thing that makes state modeling so tough, and really PSD modeling too, but state modeling so tough, is modeling all these maintenance startup shutdown emissions. Because they might, as we talked about it when we went through our excruciating case study yesterday, they just might not occur at the same time. So,
well, I mean, and how accurate do you think they really are for a huge, huge site? We have to try to say what will simultaneously occur and what won't, and it's just crazy.
It is crazy.
It's crazy. Now,
because a lot of times it's going to be limited by your maintenance staff or something like that.
Right.
I mean, it's something completely. Yeah.
But you can hire contract maintenance people at big, big turnarounds, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wonder,
That's
I mean,
right.
you put all this time and effort into it, and I wonder if it's really very meaningful.
Yeah, I do too. And it really hits you hard on the MSS stuff.
Big time.
Because those are low-level, non-buoyant emissions, and they just hang on the property line.
Mm-hmm.
And TCQ in their guidance cuts you a little bit of slack. They on the MSS you can be like at 25% of the ESO before you have to go facility-wide modeling, but that's not much.
It isn't.
That's not much at all. So you're going to be hitting a lot of, if you're not really thoughtful and what operations you say can't happen simultaneously, you're going to have a lot of facility-wide modeling going on. All right, so let's move on to the health effects review. It's going to apply to all chemicals with a screening level, which is about all chemicals. In fact, they tell you if you get a chemical that doesn't have an effect screening level, turn it into them, they'll determine an effect screening level for it. So you follow this MAERT effects review applicability flow chart, determine when a compound falls out. The good news is you don't have to add any background concentrations. You don't usually have to model your neighbors' ESLs, but you do have to do this, like we've been talking about, this rigorous MSS versus normal emissions, determine what the worst case operating scenarios are. So, you know, all that means is you often have to model multiple scenarios for short-term averaging periods. This is the flow chart, and I threw the movie in Throw Mama from the Train, because that's how I feel when I try to read this. I don't know, I'm an engineer and everything, but I don't know, there's something about this flow chart that...
Flow chart's terrible.
It's just not intuitive.
I don't trust flow charts that have arrows going up instead of down on the chart.
And it's so misleading too, like if you read the questions on the flow chart and read the guidance, they don't match up.
Yeah.
Like they're missing so many things.
And then, you know, Matt, what kills me, I get all the way down here to step 7, and I'm going,
What did I learn?
yeah, or where the hell's step 7? And then I'm going, oh yeah, that's on page 2 of the flow chart.
Yeah, you just gotta take
There's
it.
another
And
page.
they try to do this weird like symmetrical thing.
I'm just
Just
joking, but.
just gotta be taken out.
It is,
So I threw in the movie Misery here too. See what you made me do?
is that Kathy Bates?
It is Kathy Bates, very good. Very good. You should get a little bit of. So, what does all this really mean? To me, it means you model your normal routine emissions, not your MSS. You can separate those first. And you model those first. And if those are over 10% of the ESL, you've got a requirement to do site-wide modeling for every compound that's over the ESL. Okay. So then you model your MSS, and there's some things here and there, but basically if you're over 25% of the ESL for your MSS emissions, you're going to site-wide as well. So it pulls in a lot of things. What you want to do when you get one of these modeling analyses is you want to eliminate the number of compounds that you model. And you usually do that by looking at effect screening level to emission rate ratio to determine, 5 or 6 worst case compounds, and you run them through the process knowing that if they pass with a higher emission rate or ESL to emission rate ratio, that the other ones that are less stringent are going to pass too. And TCQ is really good about letting you model worst case compounds. If they're coming from basically the same areas and the same sources, if they're somewhere completely different in the plant, that's not going to work. But if they're similar sources, they're usually pretty good about doing that. So then you model the whole thing, and let's say that your predicted concentrations are less than the ESL after you go to facility wide, you're finished. Let's say your predicted concentrations are 2 times the ESL, but that happens at the plant next door. Those are impacts at the plant next door. They're at industrial locations. And in the community where they're houses or commercial things, they're less than the ESL. Then you're finished. You're done. That hardly ever happens anymore. So you do what's called a tier 3 analysis, which means the magnitude and frequency of exceedance analysis is developed. And what we're doing here is giving the state toxicologist some information to determine, okay, this is happening, but is it happening 5 times a year, 10 times a year, or is it happening 8,000 times a year, 8,000 hours out of the year? And when it happens, is it happening at high multiples of the ESL, a lot, or is it just like 2 times the ESL for a few hours? So they've developed these guidelines for this frequency of analysis and magnitude and frequency of analysis. And so they've divided all their benchmarks by what kind of receptor it is. Is it over industrial land? Is it over non-industrial land? And you can see that they're saying here, if the ground level concentration, the maximum ground level concentration, they would really like to see it less than 10 times the ESL, at least for no more than 1 hour a year. And they would really like to see less than 24 hours of the year where it's less than 2 times the ESL, and less than 10 hours during the year where it's greater than 4 times the ESL. So all this kind of helps them to make a determination of, you know, are these things happening often, or are they kind of one-off of bad met days, or what? So, and you can see the guidance drops down. It's more stringent over non-industrial. You know, then they would really like for you to have no more than 24 hours of going over the ESL. But all this is negotiable. It doesn't, if you don't hit these guidelines, it doesn't mean you're not going to get your permit. It just means it's going to go to toxicology, and there's going to be a toxicology review, and they're going to make a final determination and recommend one way or the other. But you will get pushback, and you will get some pushback if you're over these, and you're definitely going to get an independent toxicology review if you're over these guidelines. And you might get one even if you're not.
We talked about the other day, sometimes waiting for the ESL is the lengthy part of the process, part of the modeling, for a new compound or a new.
That's a pretty robust list at this point, but yeah, it's amazing how many times you come up with something new.
Yeah, I haven't ever had to wait too long. I mean, like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 days. I mean, they usually get back to me pretty,
Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. Yeah, they're probably just pulling up the data for something that's very similar and giving you the same result.
Right.
That's usually what happens to me. If it's something really new, yeah. But, so, you know, a lot of people don't do this. So, you know, Tammy, I know you guys probably load over the water quite
This
a
is
bit.
a big deal for us because we have no distance to the property line down there in marine traffic
Right.
because we're right on the water. And so, and we have had, I mean, we've had to work some things out to pass them on down there.
Yeah, and there's a few little tricks and considerations they let you get. But you see, you can, you know, even in this guidance, they say over industrial water, you're loading, you know, maybe up to 25 times the even short-term ESL. You know. Non-industrial water, people are fishing, it's a little different. So where do people fish and where do they not fish?
It's not good that it's, I mean, you know, now because of the Coast Guard, you know, we've got, because of the security that's been placed since 9/11, there's a lot of water that maybe would have had people in it before that isn't gonna have people
That's right.
there now.
Right.
So
That's right.
it's helped us with our modeling. I mean, it's a sad situation that that's what brought us there, but,
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that before too, but I'm sure that's the case, because they used to tell us that, you know, if you run people out of there,
oh, can't do that.
you know, you don't have to put receptors there.
Right,
If you're controlling it, that, you know, yeah, but, yeah, I bet 9/11 Coast Guard stuff has made them stay a little bit closer.
So places that people might normally be fishing, they're not fishing now.
Yeah.
So
They
it's
do
really,
take mitigation factors into play, what kind of property it actually lands on, if it's not industrial. So we had one that where all the hives landed in a cemetery. We said we weren't getting any complaints from the residents. And they said, you know, it was out in the middle of the country, it wasn't one that got visitors every day even, so the assumption that someone's there 24/7, 70 years didn't hold up, and that's
It's definitely a case by
and we made
case.
that case, and they said, yeah, okay, now it passes, fine, we understand.
Definitely a case by case review. You know, I've had areas that were fairly remote. There's cattle ranches next door. As far as you can see, no houses, no nothing. But, and we made that case, and we're going, well, is there anything that's going to prevent a rezoning during the period of the permit life? The permit's lasting 10 years. You know, who knows if are they, so, I mean, it just depends who you get and what kind of questions they're giving you. It's all good reason to have a good relationship with your permit engineer.
Yeah, that's a huge.
So, all right, so the final Tier 3 ESL observations, projects that meet these extended guidelines for Tier 3 are usually deemed acceptable. But if the guidelines are exceeded, right, like I said, it doesn't mean that they're not going to get approved. They're just going to go into a case-by-case review on the top. Kind of, there's some terms that we use a little bit in those tables. So again, the primary TCQ modeling reference documents or the air quality modeling guidelines, they came out with a new, they're calling it draft, but it's the one everyone's using now, 2014. You know, reading through the draft, it seems like the main thing that they put in there, I didn't see any fundamental shifts other than they added a whole lot of stuff for the new NACs and how you determine representative monitoring stations and stuff like that. So that's it. And then there's a modeling and effects review applicability document to determine which meat pollutants require the health effects review. And those two documents make up the main modeling guidance in Texas. Another footnote that my modelers put in now, so I'll just read it to you. Currently, there are big problems with the TCQ emission inventory database, and they're transitioning to a new system. And in the meantime, these databases are not available, and companies have to construct their own databases from permit file search, which is very time-consuming and expensive. Frowny face. What she's talking about is if you trigger PSD and you have to get all these things within this 50-kilometer radius. It used to be that you just said, okay, here's my significant impact area, here's my center of my plant, I need to go out 58 kilometers, I want a retrieval for NACs, I want a retrieval for increment consumers, and I want it for this time period, this averaging period, this averaging period. Bam, and you just got it. Well, they got issues now, so you're having to do a lot of that legwork yourself. I guess that's going to get fixed one of these days, but boy, it sure seems to be taking a long time. I'm not sure. Do you know the reason for those issues? Is it just backlogs and getting all that information in? Or?
They hired an independent contractor to make this the system that you can input your MAERT into a database so that you can pull that out.
Yeah.
And every time the contractor comes back with the system and it gets tested internally, it's just got, you know, MAERTs are constructed an infinite number of ways, an infinite different kinds of caps and organizations and customizations and footnotes, and so every time it gets tested, the agency sends back another list of here's the things that need to get fixed, and then 2 years later they come back and they're like, how about this? And they're like, here's the things that need to get fixed, and then 2 years later they come back and they're like, how about this? And then that's been going on for...
I understand it better now. So, our day 3, we've got through our hot topics, we've got through our minor source permitting, unless you guys have any specific questions. And we're to the course review, which I guess we've kind of done, Bruce, right? Did you get some things? So that's the things that I'm not going to go through the agenda again. I hope you guys had a good time, learned some stuff, but also had a good time doing it.
Did you take these home and go through any of those topics, come up if you want, just drop us a line?
Yep.
Be happy to respond to them.
But just in case you guys needed one more video, let's do it. I think I turned, okay, hang on.
We start over again.
Here we go. This is the video everybody's been waiting for 3 days now.
Our critics and the evaluation.
Physical, you were the best.
All right.
You still here? It's over. Go.